The trade war has begun, and could a real war be just around the corner? We'll get into all that and more in this video. So first of all, Trump triggers trade war with tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. So this is really important, and it just took effect last night. So US President Donald Trump's new 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada took effect on Tuesday, along with the doubling of duties on Chinese goods to 20%, launching new trade conflicts with the top 3 US trading partners. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out here. I listened to Donald Trump's book last week, and what I found out in that book is he says to actually make these massive promises or to make these huge threats. But what he also says in that book is you've got to be willing to follow through on those threats, even if you think that the outcome of those threats could be worse for you. So, I mean, that kind of shows the mentality here when it comes to the trade war. And I would highly recommend reading that book, even if you don't like Donald Trump, to get an understanding into how he operates, because it's very telling of that. So China responded immediately, announcing additional tariffs of 10 to 15% on certain US imports from March 10th, and a series of new export restrictions for designated US entities. Later, it said that it had raised complaints about the new measures with the WTO. Canada and Mexico, which have enjoyed a virtually tariff-free trading relationship with the US for 3 decades, were posed to immediately retaliate. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Ottawa would respond with 25% tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods, 20 billion US worth of US imports, and add another 125 billion if Trump's tariff was still in place in 21 days. He said previously that Canada would target American beer, wine, bourbon, and home appliances and Florida orange juice. I mean, it's very petty. It's very stupid, these sort of tariff wars. You can't even quantify the demands that Trump is really after, because he said it's about the migrant and drug flow, but he hasn't really quantified what it would take for one to actually meet what he is requiring in order to get rid of the tariffs. And then on the flip side, he said the tariffs are all about bringing money into the United States, which is totally false, because tariffs don't operate like that. It's just like an additional tax on the American taxpayer. But obviously a lot of goods come out of the United States, and that means that the world will be paying more for US goods. And you have to remember as well, the US dollar that has been rising already makes US exports even more expensive. And then you're just going to add to that the tariffs as well. It just makes the US even more uncompetitive. Now, you may see auto manufacturers announce that they're going to move and open up operations in the United States instead of Mexico and Canada. But if you look at Mexico, like, they're increasingly buying more Chinese vehicles, and more Chinese vehicles will likely be actually made in Mexico over time as well, sold to the rest of Latin America as well. So basically, you've just got the world going in one direction, whilst the North America bubble, primarily the United States and Canada, are just on a completely different path. So it's very interesting to think about that dynamic. So tariffs will disrupt an incredibly successful trading relationship, Trudeau said, adding that they would violate the US-Mexico-Canada free trade agreement signed by Trump during his first term. And obviously Trump touted how great this agreement was for the United States, and now obviously it's not so great. He needs to enact all these tariffs, and supposedly it's to do with the drug flow and illegal migration. But if you look into the numbers on that, and he hasn't really given any quantifiable means to actually say, okay, that problem is solved. So it's quite vague, all the claims. We've also got a prime minister who said he was resigning, who is still negotiating these things. And quite frankly, I find that infuriating that in Canada, you have not even got somebody who's half decent at negotiating. You've got the potential of World Economic Forum sponsored Chrystia Freeland or Mark Carney to replace Justin Trudeau and continue this charade of just rampant government spending and complete lunacy on economic policy. So anyways, it's going to be incredibly interesting the next couple of weeks to see if the tariffs actually stick here. Ontario Premier Doug Ford told NBC that he was ready to cut off shipments of nickel and transmission of electricity from his province to the US. Now, this is really important because I saw Mr. Sunshine Baby put this on X, and he is so right to actually point this out. So the fat pig in Canada is ready to commit an act of war against the United States with a smile on his face as a response to the tariffs. This is going to backfire on us Canadians so freaking bad. And he is right, actually. So if you cut power off, it could be considered as an act of war. So this is incredibly terrifying for Canadians because you have such lunacy that is going on. And yeah, that's really happening, that he is threatening to cut off electricity to the United States. Now, tariffs is one thing, but doing stuff like that, hitting key infrastructure and turning the taps off on pipelines and stuff like that is just ridiculous. And it could definitely be considered an act of war. And once again, it's just the regular people, the average Joe and Jane, that are going to feel most of the impacts of the tariffs and the trade war, whilst the people in positions of power are just going to get away and everything's going to be fine for them. They're not really going to notice a difference. And unfortunately, so many people don't understand tariffs and trade wars and how they impact inflation and the dynamics of trade flow and trade disruptions that they really don't have a clue how bad this is really going to get. And you've already got Canada, which is in a terrible place economically, like it's in a recession, in a deep recession, and it's heading into a depression, it looks like now. The economy looks really, really bad. And the only country that you can really look at and say this looks like a country that is actually poised to benefit from all of this is not the United States, it's actually China. And that's what a lot of people don't realize and understand. So this is from CBC, says right here, newly re-elected Premier Doug Ford doubled down on Monday on his threat to cut off electricity flowing from Ontario to several American states if the US moves ahead with tariffs. So Mr. Sunshine Baby, great to point this out. I would highly recommend to check out his YouTube channel as well. Fantastic stuff. And I know he watches this channel. So thank you for your contribution to this video. So you've also got this, which is from Visual Capitalist, which shows the tariff hotspots, the cities that are going to be most impacted by tariffs and the ones which won't be. And you can basically see here, BC is obviously close to Asia, so it's poised to actually benefit from the tariffs and obviously probably a closer relationship with China. You've also got Edmonton, which is going to be one of the places that is less impacted by the tariffs. You've got Calgary, remember that place, the real estate bubble that has really thrived over the past couple of years. So many different narratives, and now the walls are really closing in on Calgary. Calgary is the largest city to be negatively impacted by tariff action. Fossil fuels and beef are major exports. So yeah, Calgary is not going to be in a good place. These tariffs are going into effect. So obviously we have to look at the chances that things like real estate are going to be worth a lot less in the coming years. And obviously if you look at the dynamics in the real estate market in Calgary, as we went through last month, you could see that the Calgary real estate market definitely looks like it's turned. And you've also got rents that are dropping there. So nothing is going in the right way there. And then basically it's on about Southern Ontario. Many towns in this region are economically connected to production in the US, in particular auto manufacturing. And you know, I have to beat the table on the auto manufacturing because really it's just this North American bubble. If you look at the cars on the road in any country outside Canada and the United States, they are mostly European cars or mostly Chinese cars. It's either one or the other or a combination of both. And really you're seeing more and more. Now, obviously, if lots of manufacturing of vehicles go from Mexico to the United States, that's going to push the cost up for those vehicles even more, make those manufacturers even more uncompetitive for the rest of the world. And guess what? They're not going to be able to just thrive only on the United States. And obviously Canada will be paying even more at that point anyway for the vehicles. So maybe maybe they would actually consider accepting Chinese vehicles to be sold in Canada without massive tariffs. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out. Like, all these trade relations going down the toilet, everything like that, is just not a good thing. And another thing that we've got to keep our eye on as well is that Trump may be pulling out of NATO. This is some rumor that's been circulating on X that he may announce tonight that he's pulling out on NATO. Who knows if that is actually going to happen? We'll have to wait and see and do a different video if it does, because that will have huge ramifications as well. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN and also want to help support the channel, go to expressvpn.com/marketmania, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.